American poet Ronnie Van Zant once sang, "Forget your lust for the rich man's gold. All that you need is in your soul." Throughout the 1980s, wrestling fans embarked on a multi-year journey that enveloped this saying and produced one of the most iconic feuds in wrestling history. A rivalry that defined an era, captivated audiences, and set the standard for storytelling in the ring. A saga not based around one specific moment or a single narrowed focus. Rather, this would become one of the shining examples of good versus evil, the everyman versus the rich elite. The battle of austerity versus opulence. Of course, we're talking about the legendary battles between the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. So grab yourself plenty of water, daddy, as we roll this one back with the rewind. Welcome to the Feud Rewind. I'm your host, Benza Lance. Spanning the 1980s, the story between Dusty and Rick would play out as the standard bearer for storytelling and audience engagement. These two titans of the ring clashed repeatedly, weaving a tale of triumph and heartbreak that still resonates with fans today. Their feud wasn't just about championship gold, though there was plenty of that at stake. No, this was the clash of ideologies, of personas, of the very essence of what it meant to be a professional wrestler and a man. In one corner, we had Dusty Rhodes, the son of a plumber, the everyman, the embodiment of blue-collar America. There was no pretense with Rhodes. His lisp, his less-than-chiseled physique, his emotional promos, all of these elements made him feel real and genuine. Dusty connected with fans on a visceral level. Rhodes' character embodied the idea of getting back up when life knocks you down. This resilience in the face of adversity struck a chord with audiences facing their own struggles. He was the people's champion long before that phrase became a catchphrase for another wrestling legend. Despite his fame, Rhodes never lost touch with his blue-collar roots. This created a powerful connection with fans who saw themselves in him. Dusty represented the American dream in its purest form. The idea that through hard work and perseverance, anyone could succeed. These aspects combined to create a character that fans not only cheered for, but emotionally invested in. When Rhodes fought, it felt like the audience was fighting alongside with him. Now, let's turn our psychological lens to the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Flair's character was a masterclass in creating a villain that audiences loved to hate. The jet-flying, limousine-riding, kiss-stealing, wheeling-dealing son of a gun. Flair truly believed he was better than everyone else. This arrogance made fans yearn to see him humbled. In addition to his ego, Flair's character reveled in excess. Women, wealth, championship gold. Flair represented excess, flamboyance, and a lifestyle that most fans could only dream of but publicly disdained. With his platinum blonde hair, custom-made robes, and larger-than-life personality, Flair was the antithesis of everything Dusty stood for. However, despite his bravado, Flair's character often resorted to cheating to win. This hinted at a deep-seated insecurity, adding complexity to his persona. Paradoxically, despite his flashy lifestyle, Flair's character was known for his incredible work rate and ability to wrestle 1 hour-long matches. This garnered a begrudging respect from fans. And finally, Rick could be cowardly or brave depending on what the story required. This psychological flexibility made him an ideal antagonist. Flair's character was the perfect foil to Rhodes. He represented everything the common man was not, and everything they were told not to be. It's also crucial to understand the landscape of professional wrestling in the 1980s. This was long before WWE, then known as the WWF, had achieved the near monopoly it would later enjoy. Regional promotions, the territories, were the lifeblood of the industry, and none were more prestigious than Jim Crockett Promotions, which would later evolve into WCW. Operating primarily in the Carolinas and Virginia, JCP was the crown jewel of the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA. A governing body that unified various wrestling territories under one world championship. It was here, in the heart of the Mid-Atlantic region, that the Rhodes-Flair feud would reach its zenith. Both men had paid their dues in the industry by the time their paths began to cross regularly. Dusty Rhodes had made a name for himself in various territories, particularly in Florida, where his everyman charm and his surprising agility for a man of his size had made him a fan favorite. Ric Flair, on the other hand, had been a mainstay of the Mid-Atlantic region since the early 1970s, gradually evolving into the nature boy persona we know today. The stage was set for a collision of titanic proportions. In one corner, the American Dream, the man of the people. In the other, the nature boy, the self-proclaimed greatest wrestler on God's green earth. Their contrasting styles and personas were tailor-made for a rivalry that would captivate audiences for years to come. Now, let's set the scene for the first major chapter in this story feud. Picture, if you will, the Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. The date, September 17th, 1981. Dusty Rhodes is the defending NWA World Heavyweight Champion in his second reign. Tonight, he steps into the ring to defend his title against the up-and-coming Nature Boy. This crowd is electric, split between Rhodes' blue-collar appeal and Flair's flashy charisma. For 24 grueling minutes, these two men push each other to the limit. Rhodes' power moves and surprising agility clash with Flair's technical prowess and dirty tactics. Back and forth they go, neither man able to gain a decisive advantage. Then, in a moment that would set the tone for their future encounters, Flair had been working Dusty's leg the entire match, not only setting Dusty up for Ric's figure four leg lock, but also being able to take the power base away from Rhodes. Well, with Ric on the top rope, Dusty goes for the suplex. His left knee gives out. Flair drops on top of him, grabs the 1-2-3 victory, and walks away as champion. The crowd is in shock. Dusty Rhodes, their hero, lies defeated. And there stands Ric Flair, arms raised in victory, the NWA World Heavyweight Championship gleaming around his waist. As he celebrates, you can almost see the wheels turning in his head. This isn't just a victory, it's the beginning of an era. The era of the Nature Boy. This match, this moment, would set the stage for years of conflict between these two larger-than-life personalities. Dusty Rhodes, never one to back down from a challenge, would spend the next several years chasing Flair and the title he believed was rightfully his. Ric Flair, reveling in his newfound status as the standard bearer for the NWA, would do everything in his power to keep the American Dream at bay. Following Flair's victory in 1981, the wrestling world buzzed with anticipation. Fans eagerly awaited Rhodes' response, and they wouldn't have to wait long. The American Dream was not content to fade into the background. Instead, he enlisted the help of close personal friend the Midnight Rider, and together they embarked on a relentless pursuit of Flair and the title, a chase that would span years and captivate audiences across the country. Over the first half of the 1980s, Flair would set the standard for what being an NWA World Heavyweight Champion meant, defending his title against such notable legends of the industry as Harley Race and Kerry Von Erich in locations such as Japan, New Zealand, and Singapore, as well as continentally. Rhodes, for his part, had formed a tag team with Magnum TA and had kept a high profile, having his own championship reigns. But perhaps one of the most memorable chapters in the saga came in 1985 at the third annual Starrcade event. Starrcade, for those who might not know, was JCP's answer to WrestleMania, their supercard designed to showcase their biggest matches and settle the most heated rivalries. Mechanically, we're fast forwarding to 1985. Harley Race had left a vacuum of sorts at the top of the NWA pecking order. By this point, Ric was in his third reign as champion, while Dusty was a former champ and more than a certified main eventer. One of these men would have to slide into that top role, as the top dog for the industry. On our journey to find out who would sit at the top of that mountain, we have to make a quick detour. On September 29th at the Omni in Atlanta, after Flair defeated Nikita Koloff in a steel cage match, Nikita and Ivan Koloff attacked Flair until Rhodes came out and fought them off. Ole and Arn Anderson then came down and, along with Flair, beat down Rhodes. Flair broke Rhodes' left ankle with a diving knee drop and applied the figure four leg lock ostensibly just to add insult to injury. Rhodes' health status for Starrcade in November was now in question. While Rhodes was away, the world outside the ring was facing its own hardships. The mid-1980s, for those of you who didn't live through it, were tough times for many Americans. Factory closures, layoffs, economic uncertainty. These weren't just new headlines. They were the daily reality for many of the fans who saw themselves in Dusty Rhodes. And this, right here, is the powder keg into which Dusty Rhodes would throw a match into with his Hard Times promo. When Rhodes returned from his injury in October, he wasn't just speaking as a wrestler who had been wronged. He was giving voice to every fan who had ever felt beaten down by life. Every worker who had lost their job. Every dreamer who had been told their time had passed. With his leg wrapped in bandages, looks directly into the camera. His eyes burn with intensity as he begins to speak. You don't know what hard times are, Daddy. Hard times are when the textile workers around this country are out of work. They got 4 or 5 kids and they can't pay their wages. They can't buy their food. Hard times are when the auto workers are out of work and they tell them to go home. And hard times are when a man has worked a job for 30 years. 30 years. And they give him a watch, kick him in the butt, and say, hey, a computer took your place, Daddy. That's hard times. This promo, delivered much better by Dusty than me, and delivered with raw emotion and conviction, resonated deeply with the audience. It perfectly encapsulates why fans connected so strongly with Dusty Rhodes. He wasn't just playing a character. He was giving voice to the struggles and frustrations of everyday Americans. And in Ric Flair, he had the perfect foil, the embodiment of excess and privilege. This locomotive of emotion was picking up steam heading into Starrcade 1985. Held November 28, 1985, at the Greensboro Coliseum Complex in North Carolina, this night would prove to be a pivotal moment in their legendary rivalry. Picture the scene. The arena is packed with over 16,000 fans, frothing at the mouth with anticipation. The main event? Ric Flair defending his NWA World Heavyweight Championship against the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. But this wasn't just any match. It was billed as the match of the century. As Rhodes made his way to the ring, you could feel the energy in the arena shift. The fans saw in him a champion for the common man, someone who could finally put an end to Flair's reign. Flair, on the other hand, strutted down the aisle with his trademark confidence, ready to prove once again why he was the man. The match itself was a grueling affair, lasting just over 22 minutes. Flair, ever the tactician, focused on wearing down Rhodes, targeting his legs to set up for the figure 4 leg lock. Rhodes, meanwhile, relied on his power game, trying to overwhelm Flair with his raw strength and determination. But here is where things take a turn. As the match reached its climax, chaos erupted. After exchanging attacks, Rhodes performed a clothesline, and Flair pulls the referee into him, knocking the ref outside the ring. Rhodes applies the figure 4 leg lock as Ollie and Arn Anderson come down to interfere. Rhodes kicked Arn out, but Ole performed a high knee to Rhodes from behind. A new ref came down to officiate, and as Flair picked up Rhodes, Rhodes pinned him with an inside cradle to win the match and the title. However, after Starrcade, Dusty Rhodes' victory was reversed by head referee Tommy Young. The outcome of the match was changed to Rhodes winning by disqualification due to interference. And since championships cannot change via DQ, Flair retains the title. This less than overwhelming ending would only serve to fuel their rivalry further. Rhodes had come so close to dethroning Flair, only to be denied by outside interference and the ticking clock. For the fans, it was a bittersweet moment. Their hero had survived the onslaught of Flair and his cronies, but the villainous Flair was still the champion. Starrcade 85 exemplified everything that made the Rhodes-Flair feud so compelling. It had drama, intensity, and a finish that left fans clamoring for more. It showcased Flair's ability to retain his title by any means necessary, and Rhodes' never-say-die attitude that endeared him to fans across the nation. It also played a pivotal point in the formation of the Four Horsemen, as they would officially form in January 1986 when Tully Blanchard and manager J.J. Dillon would join Flair and the Andersons. More importantly, this match set up the stage for future encounters. It proved that Rhodes was a worthy challenger to Flair's throne, and the Four Horsemen would stop at nothing to keep that title around Flair's waist. the war between Flair and Rhodes was far from over. In fact, it was just heating up. Dusty was not only a next-level talent in the ring, but he was close to savant outside of it as well. In order to even the odds, if you will, against the Four Horsemen, Rhodes set out to create a match that could even those stakes. It would take him a few years, until 1987, that we saw the birth of War Games. So what exactly is a War Games? Picture two rings, side by side, surrounded by a giant steel cage. A round one, I guess. But this isn't your ordinary steel cage. Oh no, this is much more sadistic. Rhodes, frustrated by the constant interference from the Horsemen, devised this match as the ultimate way to settle the score. As he famously put it, this was his chance to get it on with the Horsemen, with no place to run, no place to hide. The match begins with one member from each team. After 5 minutes, another member from the team with the advantage, determined by pre-match coin toss, enters. From there, alternating members enter every 2 minutes until all 10 men are in the cage. That's when the match beyond begins. No DQs, no pitfalls. Submission or surrender only. The 1987 Great American Bash was the third annual Great American Bash event produced by JCP. Like the previous year, it was a series of events held throughout the summer, although this year's tour only had 3 events instead of 13. The main event of the main show, taking place at the Miami Orange Bowl on July 31st, 1987, saw the caged 2-ringed Thunderdome-style match finally have its debut walk on the runway. For this inaugural War Games, we had the dream team of Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, the Road Warriors, and Paul Ellering facing off against the Four Horsemen. At this point, that's Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Lex Luger, and their manager, J.J. Dillon. The match was absolute chaos from the get-go, with almost unprecedented brutality. Bodies flying everywhere, men using the cage as a weapon, double teams and triple teams galore. The Road Warriors, known for their power and intensity, were like caged animals. Flair, ever the crafty veteran, used every dirty trick in the book to gain an advantage. But the star of the show? Dusty Rhodes himself. This was his brainchild, after all, and he was determined to make it a success. He took a hellacious beating but kept coming back for more, embodying that never-say-die spirit that made him such a fan favorite. The climax of the match came when all 10 men were finally in the cage. It was absolute bedlam. Flair had Dusty locked in a figure-4 leg lock, and the Road Warriors were demolishing Arn and Tully. And Nikita Koloff was trading blows with Lex Luger. In the end, though, it was J.J. Dillon, the manager, who proved to be the weak link for the Horsemen. Caught in a double armbar by Dusty, an animal of the Road Warriors, Dillon had no choice but to surrender, giving Rhodes' team the victory. The aftermath of this match was electric. The fans were on their feet, having witnessed something truly revolutionary. Dusty Rhodes had not only created a new match type, but he had also finally gotten one over on the Four Horsemen in decisive fashion. The first War Games match set the standard for all that would follow. It was brutal, it was chaotic, but above all, it was compelling storytelling. It took Rhodes and Flair feud to new heights, proving that their rivalry could spawn innovation that would change the wrestling landscape forever. War Games would go on to become a staple of NWA and later WCW programming, always bringing with it a sense of finality and high stakes. And all started here, born from the mind of the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, in the heat of his rivalry with the Nature Boy. Now, might seem a little strange, if you will, but canonically, this is going to bring us to the end of our feud. While this rewind might be short on matches, that's mostly because a lot of the times there would be Dusty finishes or Flair would just straight up win. Not necessarily saying that's a negative factor. It's often better to have the babyface, Rhodes in this case, always be in that perpetual carrot and stick chase mode. Regardless, Rhodes and Flair would always remain embroiled throughout most of the rest of the 80s and early 90s to some degree, perhaps most infamously in 1987. Dusty Rhodes was doing a meet and greet with fans at a local mall when Ric Flair and his Four Horsemen ambushed him. At its core, the Rhodes-Flair feud was a classic tale of good versus evil, the everyman versus the elite. But what made it truly special was the depth and authenticity both men brought to their roles. Dusty Rhodes, with his less than perfect physique and distinctive lisp, was relatable in a way few wrestlers before or since have managed to be. He didn't look like a superstar, but that was precisely his appeal. When Rhodes spoke about hard times, fans believed him because they saw themselves in him. He was the embodiment of the American dream. Not the glitzy, glamorous version, but the gritty, hard-working ideal that resonated with blue-collar America. Flair, on the other hand, was the perfect antagonist. His lavish robes, his boasts about his custom-made shoes, and $15,000 watches. His catchphrase of, "To be the man, you gotta beat the man." All these elements positioned him as everything Dusty Rhodes was not. Flair represented the excess of the 1980s, the unattainable lifestyle that many dreamed of but few could achieve. This stark contrast created a narrative that was easy for fans to invest in emotionally. Every time Rhodes challenged Flair, it wasn't just a wrestling match. It was a chance for the common man to triumph over the system, for hard work and perseverance to overcome privilege and excess. But what truly set this feud apart was the commitment both men showed to their characters, both in and out of the ring. They lived their gimmicks, sometimes to extremes that were further worse, if we're being perfectly frank and honest. Flair was known for his jet-setting lifestyle and expensive tastes, while Rhodes maintained his everyman persona even as he became one of the biggest stars in the industry. Seriously, one of the most enduring legacies of this feud is the emphasis it placed on character development. Both Rhodes and Flair were more than just wrestlers. They were fully realized characters with clear motivations, distinct personalities, and consistent behavior. This depth of character is something that many modern wrestlers and promotions strive for, understanding that fans invest in personalities as much as they do in in-ring action. Both Rhodes and Flair excelled because their characters felt real and wholly authentic. They weren't playing roles assigned to them by writers. They were amplified versions of themselves. This authenticity allowed fans to form a general emotional connection with them, something that remains crucial in wrestling today. This dedication to character extended to their in-ring performances as well. Flair's technical proficiency and Rhodes' brawling style created a compelling clash every time they locked up. Their matches told a story. Flair trying to wear down Rhodes with his signature figure four leg lock. Rhodes firing up the crowd with his bionic elbow and atomic drop. Moreover, both men understood the importance of selling, making their opponent's offense look devastating. Flair in particular was a master at this. His exaggerated bumps and flops made Rhodes look like a powerhouse, despite his unconventional physique. This willingness to make each other look good elevated their matches and added to the drama of their feud. The impact of the Rhodes-Flair rivalry on professional wrestling cannot be overstated. It set a new standard for long-term storytelling in the industry. While wrestling has always had heroes and villains, the depth and longevity of this feud showed that wrestling narratives could be complex, nuanced, and emotionally engaging over extended periods. This influence can be seen in many of the great rivalries that followed. The ongoing battle between Stone Cold Austin and Vince McMahon in the late 1990s, for instance, echoed many of the everyman versus authority themes that Flair and Rhodes had explored a decade earlier. The feud also demonstrated the drawing power of a well-told story. Whenever Rhodes and Flair clashed, arenas were packed. The rivalry helped establish Jim Crockett Promotions as a major player in the industry, setting the stage for its eventual evolution into WCW. Furthermore, the Rhodes-Flair feud played a significant role in elevating the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Their battles over the title imbued it with a sense of prestige and importance that made it feel like the most coveted prize in wrestling. This focus on championship prestige would become a hallmark of NWA and later WCW programming. As we look back on the Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes feud from our modern perspective, it's clear that this rivalry was more than just a series of great matches or memorable promos. It was a masterclass in wrestling psychology, character work, and long-term storytelling. The Rhodes-Flair rivalry also showcased the power of a well-crafted narrative. Their feud wasn't just about winning matches or championships, really. It was a story about class struggle, about perseverance in the face of adversity, about the corrupting influence of power and wealth. these themes gave their matches context and meaning, elevating them beyond mere athletic contests. The feud also demonstrates the value of long-term booking. In today's fast-paced wrestling landscape, with weekly television shows and monthly premium live events, there's often pressure to rush through storylines. But the Rhodes Flair rivalry shows that allowing a story to develop over time can lead to more satisfying payoffs and create moments that fans remember for decades. It's worth noting that the impact of this feud extended far beyond the careers of Flair's and Rhodes themselves. Many of the talents who were part of the NWA/WCW roster during this time, from Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard to Lex Luger and Sting, those guys all learned valuable lessons from watching these two masters work. In essence, the Rhodes-Flair feud essentially served as a finishing school for a generation of wrestling talent. In an era of rapid storytelling turnover and increasingly spectacular in-ring action, the Rhodes-Flair rivalry reminds us of the power of simplicity. A compelling character conflict, consistent storytelling, and emotional investment from the performers can create magic that transcends any single match or moment. Even today, nearly 4 decades later, we can see the influence of this rivalry. When a plucky underdog challenges a cocky champion, when a feud extends beyond the ring into personal territory, when a promo manages to touch on real-world issues and emotions. In all of these moments, we see echoes and reflections of Rhodes versus Flair. It also serves as a reminder of the importance of allowing wrestlers' natural charisma and personality to shine through. While scripted promos and carefully crafted character arcs have their place, there's something special about performers who can speak from their heart and connect with an audience on a visceral level. Finally, the Rhodes-Flair feud underscores the idea that in wrestling, the journey is often more important than the destination. Yes, their championship matches were significant, but it was the build-up, the promos, the small moments of triumphs and setbacks along the way that really made this rivalry legendary. What made the psychological dynamic so effective was its reflection on real-world social dynamics. In an era of increasing wealth disparity and corporate excess, Rhodes and Flair's characters tapped into genuine societal tensions. Understanding the psychological underpinnings of these characters help us appreciate why this feud resonated so deeply with audiences. It wasn't just about wrestling moves or championship belts. It was about conflicting worldviews, contrasting values, and the age-old story of the underdog fighting the established elite. And with that brings us to the end of the Rewind for the week. I appreciate you spending some time with me, reliving some classic wrestling drama. Make sure on all the socials, including here, to do that follow, like, subscribe, and share gimmick. We're on all the socials as well as Feud Rewind. And the email, if you have any questions, comments, a feud you'd like to see rewound, hit me up. It's right there. Fellow fan, I'm your host, Ben Lance, and I'll see you next week when we roll it back with another feud to rewind.